I love how the beginning of every single stream is like me messing around with the camera or like over here typing something. I gotta get better at like setting this up so it just goes live with me actually working instead of trying to get all the stuff to happen that's going live. Hey, my mic's on. That's good. So I slightly misjudged the time of my prep work, or rather changed my mind on what I wanted to do halfway through. So I got a couple more wigwags to do. So if you're watching and bearing with me, I hope you really like just glass in general, because this first part's not going to be super exciting. So what I'm going to be working on today is at least 3 Sherlocks. We're going to see how long everything takes. One of them is actually for a customer. That's actually this color that he requested. So we're going to do that live so I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And then I'm going to be trying a couple different things that I haven't really done before, per se. If you've been following the stream, I've been working with Dichro a little bit more lately. So I think I'm going to put some Dichro kickstands on some of my Wigwag Sherlocks, and that should look cool. I don't often do a lot of retail work, but it is the Corona times, so I am just super thankful that I work at home. So welcome to anyone in the chat. So I got someone new popping in. Feel free to say hi. If you guys have any questions, comments, whatever, go ahead and throw it in the chat. I'm happy to respond. It gives me an excuse like not talk to myself for 3 hours, which I'm totally fine doing. You live alone in the mountains long enough, and talking to yourself is a skill you gain. So basically what I'm doing is just kind of heating up a small section with my little flame of this tubing, and then you can see I changed the angle slightly so that I'm kind of making a V, and that forces the glass into a point. And then I blow into it to kind of help even out that little section that I just created. And then just running down this whole piece. This is how I do my wigwags. I pull my own tubing. We got a lathe over in the corner that I'm not very good at, but I can pull tubing with it. And so most of the colors are going to be, one of a kind. Obviously, people can make them. It's not like super secret recipe, but, I like to do some things a little bit different, so I'm not, even if I'm trying to get something close to a Golden Gate color, because let's face it, Golden Gate has some awesome patterns. Try to throw something a little else extra in there to make it my own, make it unique. So when people buy my work, they're not just getting something that they're going to see someone else run around with. They've got a completely unique color set, mostly unique color set. So this piece, for example, There was a piece I made a while ago, and a guy asked me if I could do something in the same color and style, and that was Golden Gate when I was working before I had the lathe. And so I found the color, and it doesn't have. I tend to use shades of color. So, like, if I'm going to use a blue, I like to use two different colors of blue that are one slightly darker than the other, in place of just using blue completely on its own. And so, same with the yellow. So this was the main tube was pretty much a yellow and blue spruce tube. Like the original tube was a yellow and blue spruce tube, which is an awesome combination. So all I did is I stuck with the blue spruce, stuck some aqua azul in there to lighten it up a shade, and then with the yellow I used sunshine and something darker than sunshine. Okay, where'd my two? There it is. And that was my, slight modification. So this thing turns out to be a little bit big. A lot of times my Sherlock ones do. So rather than try to do it completely just like at the end of my tube, I'm going to use a blue hose. Which I probably don't use as much as I should. They're awesome. It's definitely a personal thing. I just don't like kind of much of tube hanging all over me. But they're undeniably useful and awesome. So all it does is just give me a little bit more control and the ability to look at what I'm doing. And so I want to gather this up without getting it thin. And as it turns out, I can't talk great with a blowtorch in my mouth. So thank you. T-shirt is from Profound Glass. I got their stickers all over to where I got my opals. Company's awesome. So I've been watching like a ton of marketing videos lately because I'm boring, and that's the kind of thing I think is hilarious and awesome. And Profound Glass, man, their marketing game is on point. Because like I use a lot of opals in my work, especially in marbles and stuff. So when I place an order with them, like I place a pretty sizable order usually. And like they send me all kinds of cool stuff, like shirts, and I have their stickers all over the place. They send you these like cool little vitamin trays with all your opals in it and little opal separator thingies and like all this stuff that probably doesn't cost them hardly anything. But like gold for me, because you know I'm poor, I can use a shirt, and the stickers are cool, and the marketing stuff awesome. So I just have like profound glass stuff all over, and I like feel like they probably just buy opals from some manufacturing because they're synthetic opals, like they're not the natural found ones go boom too high of a moisture content. Or maybe they have their own factory. I don't know. I don't know how profound works. Company's awesome. Their marketing game's on point. So the reason I wanted to use the blow tube instead of doing that the way I normally do it is just a matter of it's so long that being able to do that comfortably and in a controlled fashion gets really difficult. And so you hook up a blow tube and it makes things just a little bit easier. How's it going, JJ? Nice to see you here. Yeah, it's not so much holding and heating the glass at the same time as I'm blowing through the tube. I tend to take it out of the flame because if you get a random thin spot, you can just like pop it by accident. Or I don't know if that's like a real thing. So I'm blowing through the tube just so that I have 2 points of control. That enables me to basically the same way I would on a lathe, smush the glass together while blowing out slightly. So it increases the diameter of the piece without increasing or decreasing how thick the piece is. And it's just so I can get a nice thick wigwag to work with. So you want to pluck these out to really thin at the point. You just want the extreme termination, which is just where all the color terminates, aptly named. You want that to be really thin. Otherwise, when you add these together, you're going to have like a big smudge at the point of everything as color overlays itself. And so that's why I spend the time to pluck out the ends to make them come to a really, really nice, small, tiny point. Now, because this is so big, I'm going to blow this out just a little. I'm using, a 10 millimeter female joint holder. They make a tool called a Soffietta that does it better, but I'm not buying a Soffietta. Yeah, that's good. So now I'm just changing the axis, and I have to tear away the glass around the hole. What you're doing there is you're basically heating up a small section and rolling a small piece of clear over it and taking it with you and then flame cutting, all kind of in one motion. And that process, basically there's going to be a ring of clear around the hole just because you popped it. Clear's on the outside. So by tearing it away like that, you're bringing the color out. So then when you put two together, it's color on color instead of clear on clear. So if you do clear on clear, you're going to have a real thin line where you can just see right through your piece, and it looks stupid. So by getting rid of the clear and putting color to color, then you don't see through your piece. It was more than a couple projects that it took me to figure that one out. So for all the people that have my like clear lined pieces from 12 years ago. Sorry. Though actually, just based on structure, sorry, those are terrible. All my earlier work was horrible. I don't claim it. Yeah, that'll be fine. So the first thing we're going to do, there you are, on my day of Sherlocks, is going to be a black and white Sherlock. It's going to have a red front cap. So window. It's going to have a red window in the front of it. So when I'm stacking these, I'm always conscious of where the termination points are, which is what defines the design of your piece. And so far, if you've watched my stream, what I've done is just stack them on top of each other and create a piece that's nice, long, and wigwag, which is actually what I'm going to do for this section, which is going to be the stem of the Sherlock. However, for the can of my Sherlock, what I'm going to be doing is having one regular wigwag and then putting a front-facing wigwag. So it'll look kind of like that. Like you're going to see the, that's not really good. You'll see it. The pattern's going to go up and out, and then I have to change the axis of the entire can and form it down to get the pattern. So it'll have a front-facing wigwag. So it looks cool. The piece that I've made for the black and white section, it's a two section can, is huge, like really huge. So this may end up having like either a really thick or a really just gigantic can. And I may end up doing like an orbital disc kind of top bowl push thingy. I haven't decided yet. That's going to be something I decide in the moment. And when you're blowing glass, deciding things in the moment is like the worst thing you can do. Like you should, like I never recommend doing that. And then I do it all the time. So, you know, that's how that goes. All right, so that kind of straightened out and evened out my wigwag. Let it cool for a second. Pop a hole. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can just pluck it out, which will get you a perfectly centered hole, but I didn't learn to do that until I've been manually popping out holes for so long that I actually got pretty good at it. So I don't bother. This is quicker. So what I'm doing there is that's a carbon cloth, which doesn't leave any residue or anything left on the outside of your glass, and I'm just brushing off kiln dust because kilns are dusty. I've seen people who like have Kevlar strips that just sit in their kiln and they set everything on the Kevlar strips. But in my experience, Kevlar strips stink when they get hot. Like, it's not like horrible, but like there's a definite smell. So I don't want to. I don't know. I think this stinks. I'm not testing it until I run out of carbon cloth. So this black and white Sherlock's it's just going to be huge. Not like huge, but like it's going to be a good size Sherlock. So what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to evenly heat the piece here and the piece here, so that when I blow, they'll come together and that center will get a little bit wider, and that makes things easier to work and gets me to my final like cylinder that I need to work this. I really should just get used to using the blow tube. Like the blow tube is the tool that every glass blower like uses, and I don't. And I feel like dodging this microphone is going to be the thing that actually gets me to use the blow tube as much as I should. Yeah, because that's like objectively better. I can just like look down and see what I'm doing. But because it's got this little metal swivel on the end, like things feel clunky to me and it bugs me. And when I'm not on stream and I don't have a microphone here, I'm totally going to just do it the sub optimal way that I've been doing it for 15 years. So I've gone over it before, but basically what I'm doing when I set it on the marver like that, or my angle marver, is you're cooling the outside layer of your glass so that the inside layers will stay a little bit warmer a little bit longer. So by blowing into it and cooling the outside layer, you're defining the outer wall width and thickness so that the rest of the glass on the inside will even itself out, trying to go from hot to cold and thick to thin. So it's just all about evening everything out. I also can't like bring my piece over to my left arm with the tube as easily. So those tubes being a little bit stubborn, it's trying to become oblong, which is not what I want. I try to even that out, get it real hot. And it's because the part near my handle is just a tad bit thinner than the rest of it, and it's causing issues. All right, that's pretty good. So now we've got our two pieces nice and connected. So from here, we're going to do our shaping. And this is going to be the stem section of our Sherlock. So we're going to add a handle. You want to get the top most of this hot. I basically go, like if I'm any closer to my handle, will start melting my 6mm rod. That's kind of my point, I guess. You want to get this crazy hot, and then we're just going to slowly pull it down. This is a little more thick and less long than I would like it, so I'm having to use my pin flame to kind of define what's going to be the bottom heat-wise, and then I can just maintain that heat rather than having to actually heat it up. So I can use less flame to get the same amount of pull without melting my handle. Just gonna pull this out, and as I do it, any spot that's thicker than I want it to be, I just hit with a little bit more heat. Sometimes what I'm doing is like almost not noticeable, but attention to detail is important. So trying to keep everything nice and even, and you get a nice even stem on your Sherlock, and that'll also help the bend later be done a lot easier. So, all right, I started blowing glass. Basically, as the story goes, I went to college, did the old college try for like a month, and that didn't really work at all, even a little bit. So I came home, and my parents basically said, "Well, you got to do something," and sent me to a career counselor. And this was around in Chicagoland in Illinois. And so when I went to the career counselor, he kind of said, "So is there anything that you've been interested in but you've never really thought of as a career?" And I was a stoner, and I had just come from a pipe shop, and I loved glass. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I was always the member of the group that had the cool pipes. And so I just said, glass blower. I thought that was really neat. And he found me a studio about a half hour from where I was living at the time that offered classes and an apprenticeship program. It was Wildfire Productions. They are still totally in business. They ended up moving up to Canada. But if you want to check them out, it's just Wildfire Productions on like Facebook, Instagram, everything. So the guy who taught me, his name was Brooke Hoskins. He was much more of an art-focused glassblower. Pipes were a very small portion of his business, and he was trying to steer the company away from that at the time, because at the time in Chicago, weed was still heavily like prosecuted. And it was still in the days of like when you went into a pipe shop, you had to call them tobacco pipes and like water pipes, and the hole on the side had to be, it was like a carburetor hole or a cleaning hole or something like that. Like you couldn't call it a rush hole or a carb, or they would like kick you out of the store. So he was trying to, get away from that, and did a lot of art shows and stuff. So now back to the piece for real quick. So now you can see this is kind of the base structure. I just pushed a couple Marias in there and thinned down the neck. So now I'm going to shape this bottom, which is going to connect to the bottom of the Sherlock, and then we will bend the neck. So Brooke he was a good teacher. The main thing that he did, though, that was like invaluable is he loved glass, and I would assume still loves glass. And I mean loves it like, if he wasn't blowing glass, he'd be buying glass, and he'd be going to things and doing shows and be something involved with it, because he just loved it. And that's what he really instilled when he taught, was exactly how awesome glass was. Like, it's a magical material, and like just the history of glass, and going back to all the stories of, Murano in the good old days where they stuck us all on an island, and it was punishable by death to leave the island because they were trying to keep their glass secrets so tightly, tight knit down. And also, if you put all of the kilns on one island, if they blow up, it only kills a select number of people, as opposed to lighting the entire city on fire. So, added benefits. And he also took me to the Sofa Show, which, if you are ever, anyone listening, in any place where the Sofa Show shows up, like, go to it. It's seriously the greatest 3D art expo I've ever been to. It was a yearly thing. It used to happen. It still happens at Navy Pier in November in Chicago. And the best glass artists in the world, the best non-pipe glass artists in the world, are all there. Like Lino Tagliapietra and Chihuly has pieces there a lot of times. Just truly fantastic work. So he took us there, or me and another apprentice, and really spent a lot of time showing me what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the neck going back and forth, and then we're going to bend it. He spent a lot of time showing us exactly like how cool glass was, how cool glass has always been, all the different ways that all these different cultures had blown glass throughout history. So that pull is a two-part process. Basically what I'm doing is I do the initial bend, and then I kind of pull this way over that way as the neck's cooling, and that gives it kind of a nice swoop. There'll usually be a cold spot underneath, and I want to make sure I hit that with the flame, or that happens, which, whatever. And so I spun glass with him, and I ended up apprenticing there for a little under a year. And then I had my own being crazy problems that pretty much led to me not being able to do that at the time. But, I retained my love of glass, and sometime later, When it got to what the hell am I going to do with my lifetime, and Domino's Pizza wasn't going to be the answer, we managed to get a place with my parents' help. That was like a horrible house in a semi-shitty neighborhood with an awesome garage. Like, this garage was a perfect, like, concrete garage, 2-car garage, like a dragon thing painted on the wall. It was awesome. So we bought this house for that garage. And that's where I started, got my initial, actually, this torch I've been working on for my entire career, and a crappy little kiln. And I started doing beads, which I'm not going to say was all I knew, but like it was the only things that I knew how to do successfully enough. Like, my beads look good. Like, I could sell those. Everything else was kind of like, eh. And so when I had been apprenticing, one of Brooks, I want to say gimmicks, but it's not really a gimmick, just kind of a way he sold glass, was he built a portable glass blowing bench and would go to these shows, and he would go to anything. Like, seriously, we went to an Italian festival one time, and to give a view, Brooke looks like me, like dreadlock, not anymore, but he did at the time, looks like me. And it was just like 4 hippies showing up at an Italian festival and blowing glass in front of like a bunch of people, and just old Italian grandmothers buying our stuff, which was awesome. I didn't hold that up. Okay, so that's the neck piece. That's going to be, we're going to put the can right there. It's going to be this nice shape. And so that's what I knew how to do. I knew how to blow glass and kind of in public, be out there. And I guess this is turning in from a like, how did you get started in glass blowing, to like an autobiography. But I've got to make 2 more big wigwags, and they're super boring. So I'm just going to keep going. And if you're getting bored, seriously, just like type God stop in the chat, and I'll shut up. But anyways, he taught us how to do it. We did it at a gas station once. Like, this gas station was having this, or not a gas station, a car wash. We had this car wash. It was like over on 75th Street in Naperville. Really nice car wash. But they had this promotion where they were like doing discount car washes. And for some reason, like, Brooke had got to talking with the guy, because Brooke was one of these like amazing marketers who talked to everybody. And they had us blow glass in like the middle of this car wash, and we made some sales, and like a bunch of people stopped by, and it was probably to this day the weirdest place I've blown glass, but it was cool. And so when I struck out kind of on my own, one of the first things we did was build a portable glass blowing bench. And version 1.0 was not bad. It was basically a triangle with plexiglass that kept people from like touching my stuff. And I set my torch on it and went to town. And we had to like jump through 6 million hoops in Chicagoland to like, we had like fireproof table covers and stuff when we did art shows. And like our tent was like flame resistant, and we had like a fire extinguisher on us at all times. They really made us dive. And now I'm out in like Buena Vista and Salida, Colorado, and we go to an art show, and they're like, "Well, is this safe?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." We got a whole folder of info, and like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's good." And like that's our process, or we have to like send the specifications of our tent or something. So a little bit more lax. But the problem with the first bench is like after a year or two, or like a year of blowing glass, the plexiglass started to melt. So like my booth started to sag, and it looked ridiculous. So we kept on like rebuying plexiglass, and it would last like 1 year before it melted. So then I just had like 6 half like folded over, crumpled pieces of plexiglass just kind of chilling in my studio. So that was weird. But we eventually moved things out a little bit and gave me a little bit more room, and I stopped using this torch. I got a smaller torch. And yeah. So then I did art shows in Chicagoland. I did those for, God, like 8 to 10 years or something. Like it was something ridiculous, like 6 to 8 years. And I worked with a company called Amder Productions, and she basically like Amy Amder, and you can check out Amder Productions. This is a big ass company. The woman who runs it, Amy Amder, like she threw a show. Like there was an art show like every other weekend all summer in Chicago, and she threw like most of them. And they had like an awesome staff, and they had like decent food and good entertainment. And lots of artists hated her because like she didn't really have time for your feelings, or like, I mean, artists tend to be kind of sensitive, and like she was a businesswoman. Like she was there to make money, and the way she made money is by making sure you made money and kept coming to her shows. So she would like, when she gave you advice, it just wasn't sugarcoated. It's like, okay, this, and this looks terrible. You can't do that. That's going to be bad. You need to change this, and this. This is good. And if you upgrade this, you'll do better. And so like people get super salty because they don't like being told that most of their, and it's usually just, it's not artwork stuff usually. It's like display stuff. Like that display is terrible. You have no height. You need to do this, that, and the other. And so like we went to our first show with like tables with cloths. We had one of those green like pop-up summer tents that you have barbecues and stuff under. That was just like super unprofessional. And we don't even know why she let us in. Like she saw what we were coming with and she let us in anyways, and thank her forever for doing that. But the first show she comes by and is just like, okay, green tent's got to go. You need height. Tables with tablecloths don't work. Look up pro panels, this, that, and the other. And we actually did it. And this was when I was selling mostly like beads and wine stoppers, and I hadn't even started doing marbles yet. So like super early in my career. And we basically did what she said, and we got some pro panels, which you can see behind me. That's not all of them. Like we have a ton. But yeah, like you can kind of see there and like there are the pro panels that we just kind of leave up year round. And it's just like we build a portable store in the studio. So whenever I have students or random person number 6 stops by, like we just have stuff out all the time, and it looks kind of pretty because pro panels are pretty awesome. So we got those, and then like the next show, okay, that was great. Get this, you need to do this, this, and this, and then we just kept doing that for the first year of my career. And she would then figure out where she could put me because I was blowing glass out the side of my tent. So we had to get corner spaces, which she ended up eventually giving to us for free. Because like when you blow glass in front of people, you'll end up with like, or I've ended up like 60 people like watching you blow glass, which is a little weird because it's just like my job. So it's like if your job was like accounting, you just set up your little accounting firm in front and people are just like, ooh, ah, to your accounting. So it's very strange. But she set us in good places, and within a couple years, I was making money, not great money because it's art, and it was also like in the middle of the recession, so that kind of sucked. But yeah, so I did that for most of my career. That was at my peak. I did 18 shows in a summer, which was hell because that was like I did a show like every weekend. I would have like one weekend off, and I couldn't, I wasn't smart. I didn't like make product ahead of time. So I just worked all week and then did a show on the weekend and then worked all week and then a show on the weekend. And that was when I decided I didn't really want to do that for the rest of my life, because I felt like I was spending more time out trying to sell my glass than I was to blowing glass. And so I switched over to wholesale production. At this time, I'd gotten a little bit better, so I could do pipes and stuff. And so I did wholesale production and did like cold calls to the pipe district in Chicago, which was hilarious. Because you had like a couple serious pipe shops, and then you had the guys that would like, you come in and they're like, I'll buy it all for like $200, and it's like $600 worth of glass. And you're like, no, that's what? No. So it was like the competing against China days. If any of the people in chat are glass blowers, like before American made became like a thing that people cared about. Yeah, you heard me. I know you're an accountant. So I would like go to one, I would like make 3 or 4 cases of glass, and I would drive to one store and go in. And half the time they like forgot that they had made appointments with you. So I would like call 2 days ahead of time, be like, hey, I'm coming in for our appointment. Like, oh yeah, dude, totally. I can't wait to see you, blah, 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 blah. And then you get there and there's just like random teenager number 12 behind the counter. And you're just like, hey, I'm here for my appointment. Like, oh, he's not here, man. I'm like, well, can you call him? Because like I drove 45 minutes from my house to come try to do the sales call. I got 2 more lined up. It's kind of time sensitive. So dude would like show up, and half the time you're like, oh, I have to go to the bank. Like, hold on a minute. So like what should be like a 5 to 10 minute transaction turns into like an hour and a half of me sitting around in this pipe store, which sometimes worked out because like customers would come in and see my glass cases open and be like, oh, hey, do you have that? And then the guy behind the counter would be like, yeah, we're about to buy it. I'm like, you weren't about to buy that. But so I would hit one, and then I would take whatever I had left to the next shop that was a little lower, and they would offer me a little bit less money, and I would get rid of most of the rest of the stuff. Yeah, I'll get to the microphone. But this is like my mom's shining glory. So if anyone else is watching, that's my mom. She came up with the idea of the whole talking while blowing glass, which is why I do like an autobiographical, like half-hour long speech while I'm making stuff. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in the grand scheme of things. So then I would take it to the guy that like would only give me $30 for like 10 pipes and get rid of whatever the rest of the crap that I had was. And then at art shows, at some point, my mom came up with the oh so brilliant idea to take her super socially awkward son, who's like can't look at the crowd. Like I'd blow glass, there'd be 60 people, and I'm just kind of doing my thing down here, and I'd look up and I just see people like as far as I could see, and I'm like, no. So I just didn't even look up. Like when I blew glass, like I never looked up. That wasn't a thing. It's how I handled stage fright. It's just out of sight, out of mind. And so she decided, in her infinite wisdom, to put a lapel mic on me and demand that I talk to all of the people that are watching me blow glass and explain what I'm doing and, go on and on. So after me fighting it for like 4 years, like I tried so hard to get out of doing this stupid thing with the mic, but I got good at it, and eventually I stopped like caring. And then eventually I learned to not like what's going on when I'm talking has absolutely no bearing on what's going on when I'm blowing glass. Like I can just keep talking, and the muscle memory is good enough that like I don't have to pay too much attention to this. So that is what evolved into what I'm doing now, which is streaming glass and doing glass blowing videos. Because the skill that I hated getting has now become very useful. And now that we're in the quarantine days, it seemed like a good time to get out there, and take my one weird skill and put it to use. So that is the incredibly long-winded answer to your probably very simple question of how did I get started? I need water. So when I first got started, I was working with Wildfire Productions. Um, I was, I don't know, 18 or something. So all I wanted to do was make a pipe, and Brooke was like not about making pipes. So he taught me like all the other things that actually like made me money for most of my career, but not pipes. But like all the things he taught me, I to this day, you will hear me say things on stream that are direct ports from my days at Wildfire. Like his favorite saying being, "You're not a maestro because of what you can make. You're a maestro because of what you can fix." And I still use that one. Like every student who I've ever had has heard that. So I'm going to try to space out the creation of these wigwags to be a little, so I'm not boring the hell out of you. So I'm going to make the stem piece of, no, I'm going to make the can of the next Sherlock, and then I'll do the fourth one of these. And I may throw in a one-piece Sherlock, depending on how long this is taking me. I was trying to get another entire set of wigwags done for like a Rasta Sherlock that I really wanted to make, but I suck at timing and knowing how long things take me, so I ended up not being able to get that done. So rather than have you watch me make like what 6 wigwags live on air, I will probably not do that. Not do that piece this time. So the moral of that whole story of my 15-year career is let people help you. Like no one gets to where they're going to be on their own. So like don't be afraid to let people help you, because if I hadn't taken help from my parents first and foremost, but Brooke taught me a lot, and Amy Amder helped me a lot. And then my mom insisting that I talk while I blow glass helped me a lot. So don't be afraid to accept help from people, because you're going to need it. Life sucks. There's the downer to that positive message. All right. Let people make you cookies. They're awesome. For some reason, my little standy pad, yes, that's the technical term, just shifts to the right the whole time I'm working. I haven't quite figured out why that is yet. So it's just like a typewriter. I slowly start moving this way while I'm working, and then I have to shift my pad back here so I can get back to where I'm supposed to be. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. Just like, this thing's freaking huge. So the can of our piece may end up just being truly, truly massive. Which isn't inherently a bad thing. It literally makes every part of this process harder for me. And I'm a little lazy, so I don't like it when things are harder for me. But it's going to be a badass Sherlock if it all goes according to plan. So first thing I'm going to do is straighten this one out. You know, it's not a good circle. Oh no, this should be good. There's stuff you can do if the can's too big. If the can's too small, yeah, you're pretty much screwed. Have this tiny little like whoop at the end. So this should work. Should. There's a whole lot of should coming off this project, but that's fine. So again, that's a place you could just pluck it out if you're not as good at centering your blowhole. For me, all I really do centering the blowhole is just focus on one very specific spot while rotating, and it kind of naturally will pop out at the center of that rotation. The only thing is you just have to be very good at your actual rotation being even and centered. Okay, this thing wasn't as big as I thought it was, so this is good. Everything in glass feels bigger when you're making it. Like especially marbles. I'm making these marbles and I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be like 3 inches, and it's like 2.1. And I was like, oh, guess I'm a wuss. But like when you're this close to everything and like heavily focusing on it for hours, or not hours, but time periods of indeterminate length, like it just feels, everything feels way bigger. Like the Sherlock feels like it's going to be huge, and then I'm going to hold it, and it's just going to be like a regular sized Sherlock that's kind of chilling in my hand. Maybe like a little bit bigger than, like not even noticeably bigger. So that cap that I put on, the second wigwag, when I made that, I drew the tube to a much thinner diameter than I generally do for my other stuff. So it took me a lot longer to make that one, but it's got like 3 times the number of little zigzags than it normally would for its size. And all that is just makes it look really cool. Like when you see this front facing on the Sherlock, it's going to have like a whole bunch of cool lines going up. And it's good for a focal window. And you just do that by pulling it down to a much thinner tube and doing a much many more zigzags per the same size final switch ball. The fire is never too hot. So the torch that I work on burns at about 2,600 degrees, which is like the temperature of the surface of the sun. And half the time, that's not hot enough. The way you're working with glass, you want to make sure that everything is crazy hot. Like I'm just holding this in the flame. That's because this torch, like a bigger torch, I would have to hold this here half as long. So the hotter the torch, the bigger the flame, the less time I have to actually sit here and soak it in. This glass doesn't even begin to move till right around 1,000 degrees, and it probably doesn't really start moving until like 1,400. So you actually want as much heat as you possibly can, as quickly as you possibly can when you're working with this stuff. And that, the quicker you can make something, the more money you end up making per hour. And that's basically my raise, is just when I learn to make something faster. So now I'm going to blow this into a sort of a disc a little bit. So you can see how now it's a disc. I'm going to pop the hole on the bottom and change the axis and then draw this all down to a cylinder again. So I want to pick, I've got the termination point here and here. So I want to hit right between the two. So on the final product on the sides, you'll see those nice termination points of the black wigwag and then the nice other wigwag on the front. First we pop a hole. And then I want to add a handle. I'm going to use a cold seal right on the front there. I'm going to take the tube off. And if I was a good glass blower and had thought ahead, I would have a second tube ready. But we all know that that's not me. So I'm going to actually just have to pop this open after I take it off here. Now we want to pluck that out so that there's no clear. And this creates a third termination point. It doesn't look that bad, but it's also kind of hidden in the piece because that'll be, the Sherlock will swoop like that, and so it'll be in the back there. You still need to make it nice and super clean. And then, just like if this was a regular wigwag, tap the handle off there, add it to the top. Oh, that's a weak seal. There we go. And so that allows me, gives me time to really hit this seal and soak it in and make sure that it's a nice, strong seal before I tap off my handle. So now we've changed the axis on what's going to be the can of our piece, and you got that nice front-facing red wigwag on our black Sherlock, black and white Sherlock. So now we do the really irritating part of trying to get this back to a cylinder from a disc. Spoilers, it doesn't want to do that, but it just takes time and heat and constant reheating and all this other nonsense to get it to do that. More heat is the answer to almost every problem in glass. So what I'll basically be doing is heating it up, blowing into it, heating it up, blowing it into it, heating it up. So you're just like expanding and condensing, and that will eventually get it to be more cylindrical than it will disc shape. Should. It should make it more cylindrical than disc shaped. Is this the only way to do this? No. Is it the best way to do this? Probably not. It's just the way I've been doing it for a long time, so it works for me. So it's slowly starting to become more cylindrical. And actually, so using the blow tube is one of the other ways they're going to do it, where I'm going to attach a handle to the side so that I have 2 points of contact. And the reason I'm dipping it down when I do that is I actually want it to stretch out a little bit in addition to becoming a cylinder. So it kind of helps it along and helps, kill two birds with one stone. Sort of. So I'm mixed on the tube on air. Like, it does save me from having to duck under my microphone, but I also don't know that I want to be like trying to talk to you with something in my mouth and like slobbering all over the place while I'm blowing glass. So we'll see. The verdict is still out on tube live. So I'm trying to stretch it down a little bit. You can see I'm holding my hand up like this. I'm going to blow in to try to even it out. But I'm actually wanting to change the shape ever so slightly to a little bit more of a cone than a straight cylinder. Oh. All right, that's pretty good. I skipped lunch. So you can see it's thinner at the bottom than at the top. And I got that nice front-facing wigwag. So now I'm going to pop the hole. That's going to be the bowl hole and push my bowl in. I'll find my push. That was quick. I want to sink this bowl hole down so it's nice and small. It's the correct size. Then we're going to heat the rim up at the top and push our bowl all the way in. Just like that. I'm going to heat the inside just so that any cold marks or anything that are in there will go away. And I'm doing the same thing by reheating this whole piece. Now we're going to pop the hole where the stem of my Sherlock will attach, which needs to be exact opposite of the front-facing wigwag. And then down at the base. That's not terrible. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So now we're going to put the two pieces together. Got to make sure everything's straight. Take off the blow tube on the bottom. And then pluck it out. Nice clean termination point. And then we're going to add a bridge. What the bridge does is it stabilizes everything. So I'm just taking a piece of glass, attaching it there, melting it off, and attaching it to the other side. And then melt those in, like really good. Last thing you want is your bridge popping off on you in the middle of the piece because it wasn't attached all that well. All right, sweet. So what that bridge is going to do once it cools is no matter what I do while heating up this connection point, that bridge is going to keep my chamber and my stem in the same relative position to each other because it's actually the one holding the weight, as long as I don't get it hot. So what I'm doing now is I'm going around that connection point and making sure everything is nice and sealed really well. I don't know 100% if this is something I need to do, but I have to wait for my bridge to cool anyways, so I always just do this while I'm waiting for the bridge to cool. And it makes sure that everything is sealed before I start actual shaping. So we got it like that. Now, to turn it into a Sherlock. So basically I want this part of the can to go like this, this back thing to come in, and then it all puffs out to a nice, smooth, rounded bottom with good curve to it. I could try to explain like the puffing method and all that, but it literally is just, you have to make a lot of them to figure out like what angles and what level of heat in what direction does what. I think Sherlocks are actually some of the hardest dry pieces you can make. I mean, yeah, you can make dry pieces that are ridiculously difficult, but like as far as the standard, um, hammer, spoon, hitter, Sherlock, things you've seen in every single pipe shop you've ever been in, I think the Sherlock is the most technically difficult to make. The smooth bottom Sherlock, not the like, oh, I can set it down. It's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Though I think I am going to add a kickstand to this piece. There's a lot of Sherlock. We'll use connoisseur. It's nicer than snobs. That they won't buy a Sherlock unless it's got a kickstand. They like their Sherlocks to sit up, which is fine. I get it. It's cool. So I'm going to add a kickstand, and we're going to actually add a dichro kickstand, which should be super neat. And this is a whole lot of blowing in and condensing and expanding and condensing to get your final shape that you're looking for, and trying to get a nice even heat base over the entire piece or bottom of the piece. But you can see how nothing's moved because my bridge has stayed intact. All right, we're almost there. When you're doing this, I found like there's that point of like it's pretty much there, and you have to resist every urge to just call it there and do it one or two more times, because those extra couple times really will make the difference. All right, that's pretty good. So you can see we got, don't worry about this part, we're going to fix that, but we got that nice swoop going on the bottom there. That's what you're looking for. So now we're going to heat the top. And all I'm going to do is just heat this bump and just get it super hot, and eventually it's going to dip, and it creates a really nice counter swoop on the other side. There you go. You see now it's got a nice inner swoop. Now I'm going to hit this front section of the inside of my can and lean it forward so that it does a little bit of a swoop of its own right at the joint. Sherlocks are a very swoopy process. Thank you. I'm pretty happy with it so far. All right, so we got that. So now I'm going to take the ridge off. And then you want to pull any of that excess bridge material off of there as much as you can. And then when you get down to the last bit, melt it in. All right. Now we'll pop our carb hole. You don't have to have the bowl push in there, but I don't feel like boiling out any of my color. So that'll keep that from happening a little bit. Little rush hole. Now we're going to add our art marks or hand grips, whatever you want to call them. I am preheating my piece just a little bit outside in the flame because this part of the piece hasn't directly been hit with the flame in a minute. And then we're just going to run down with clear, start with a large dot and work our way down. And you're going to follow the swoop of your piece so it kind of draws your eye around the curve of your piece, which is what you want because your curvy piece is sexy. So yeah, draws around. Now heat it up, melt all those in. Yeah, I think this piece this looks good. It is a little bit bigger than my average Sherlock, but that's not a big deal. That just means I get to charge more for it. Yay! All right. So now we got all that going. It is time to make our kickstand. Whew, I need to get some water. Hold on. All right, before we kickstand, I'm going to make you sit through another wigwag, because then I'm done and ready for the next Sherlock. And I'm actually doing the like super complicated, difficult Sherlock first, and the one that's a little bit more stock standard second. Oop, that's never good. So I didn't preheat this enough, so it cracked. That's what happens. Always preheat your work, kids. There's no downside. You're just kind of being lazy. Which I am. So thanks to everyone who's hanging out with me here today. If you enjoy the stream, make sure to hit that like button and check out my other videos. I think next video getting uploaded in the next day or two is going to be a flower marble tutorial. So we're going to blow through the rest of the marbles and then probably go into blown work, where I'll be doing things like Christmas ornaments and flare dishes and little jars. And I have a feeling Friday's stream is rapidly going to turn into like doing stuff I think I can do, but I've never tried before. Because, you know, I have a pretty big catalog of products that I generally make. But in short order, I will run out of like, these are the things that I make for art shows, like stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is then just start testing stuff and attempting things and seeing what happens and works. So I'll probably play with some sculptural stuff. Like I want to do a tree sculpture that I'm going to like glue to a rock and all this other stuff. I think it's going to look cool. And what better time than live in front of people to try something you've never even come close to trying before. So mom's story in honor of Mother's Day. Whenever my mom has company and is cooking a meal, she will always try like something she's never done before. You know, people are coming over to our house for the first time and are going to judge us on our food because that's what people do. And she's trying to cook things that she's never tried to cook before. But then when she cooks something that she's cooked like 1,600 times, and she does this with no fear, just like, no, man, I'm cooking this and it's going to be great. And to her credit, it usually is. But then when she cooks something that she's cooked like 1,600 times for just like me and my dad, and it'll be like 13. Is it okay? Does it taste okay? Does it taste fine? Like absolutely cracks me up. So I think I get my testing new stuff on air gene from her. All right. So now I'll get this into wigwag form. And then we will make the kickstand for our black and white Sherlock. And then we will get to our teal and yellow Sherlock. So all of these products, I will get pictures up tomorrow morning. And I will have pictures on my Vulcan Glass Art Studio Facebook, and I will do a short video slideshow of everything that we've made today. And by we, I mean me and my 4 other personalities. Or I guess you guys going on this ridiculous journey with me this Mother's Day. So I've been like standing in the same place since 1 o'clock, so all my stuff is starting to hurt. Everyone watching today is now like at least proficient at making wigwags. All right, that's it. That's the end of the wigwags. I've made all of them. All right. cab. That's what I'm doing. Kickstand. So we're going to do a dichro kickstand. So I want to start by gathering up, just getting a small gather and smushing it flat. I don't want this kickstand to be like ginormous. I just want it to be a fairly reasonable size. So I got to be careful not to gather too much. Should be pretty good. Nice disc. Gonna grab my piece of dichro out of the kiln. Wasn't quite sure if it was going to be big enough, but it looks like we can make it work. So I'm going to do it's kind of a dot square shiny thing pattern. Now we're just going to heat it up and simultaneously heat up our disc. So it starts to curl. That's kind of how I can tell it's ready to go. Just going to take it, set it down, and go. It's pretty good. Then I'm going to cut off the edge. And then we're going to fold the edges over. All right. Want to heat the whole thing up and then press it down just a little, get it centered, and spread the pattern out just a little bit. I'm going to take my Raven black, which is the same black that I use. Which is the same black that I used for the black part of my black and white wigwag, so the colors will match. And we just want to gather it on real thin. Then we'll heat the whole thing up. and smush it. And we're going to turn it into a disc. So if I just leave it out on the kiln, if it's just like hot glass, it only takes I don't know, like 15-20 minutes depending on thickness. However, most of the time that stuff will shatter if it's not just like tube or random work. For you to properly cool glass, it takes so there's a formula. It's like 10 minutes at 1,000 degrees per X number of millimeters of thickness. Um, I just leave it in there for a couple hours, and then it takes like 4 to 6 hours for the kiln to cool down, and that's kind of how long it takes. So all I'm doing is just kind of repeating the smush and then run it on my angle marver like this, and that will cause it to go into a disc. I'm now going to hot seal to the bottom because I actually am going to want to leave a little bit of stuff on the back here to attach to the Sherlock. And it's okay for it to be a little thick. Like, attaching to the Sherlock is important. You want this to be a really, really solid, good attachment. So I'm going to take off the thick rod. Now I want to heat up the front and basically smush and disc just like I did for the back. And all I was doing there is by putting something here, that means that I have two angles causing the disc and one angle that I can smush it flat. So I get this nice, flat, sharp-edged disc for my kickstand. So now we'll cold seal to the front. Take off the handle, but leave a nice chunk on the back there to attach to the piece. So you can see how you have that nice attachment section. Grab the Sherlock. I want to hit the spot on the Sherlock where the kickstand's going to go and heat the edge of the kickstand. Once they're both molten hot, I'm going to touch the two together. And just position it carefully. tap off that handle. Get rid of my punchy mark. So now I just want to make sure I seal that underneath and in places that I wasn't really hitting all that well. So now it's nice and sealed. And so now when you set it down, it'll lean on that kickstand and stand up properly. So that one's pretty much done. I'm just going to set it in the kiln and let the whole thing warm back up, and then I can take it off the tube. So next, we're going to do a much more basic Sherlock. I'm not going to do a front-facing window. I'm not going to do a kickstand and any of that craziness. So this is going to be more standard Sherlock, so it should get done quicker. All right. All right, here we go. So same thing as always. I'm going to be stacking 2 wigwags together. So when you make a wigwag, the tubing tends to come in 4s. So like 2 yellow sections, 2 blue sections. You have to kind of decide, where'd my tube go? There it is. You have to decide what you want to be touching where, so that in the final product you have a nice concise pattern. So on this one, I'm popping it on the yellow. So that means that I'll be touching the wigwags yellow to yellow. And by doing that, it's going to kind of create the look like both those wigwags are kind of exploding out of each other in either direction. And I think that it will look better to have that than the blue doing that. So I'll be doing yellow to yellow. Whatever your focal accent section on your tube is, that tends to be the side that you want to pop on and have those 2 connect. So first we'll straighten this one out, get it looking good. So this color, this tube, the blue is an incredibly dense color, and I've taught on previous streams. I'm just going to stab myself and burn myself repeatedly. On previous streams, I've talked about how different densities in color end up affecting how the product moves and how the glass moves. And this is one of those colors that it wants to constantly disc itself out because the blue is insanely more dense than the yellow. Like it's a very large difference. So you have to be very careful when you're working it to make sure that it stays even and doesn't turn into a flat kind of disc dome. Pop open that, tear off the glass on the end. Come back. Okay. I should use longer tweezers to do that. Whoa. So I'm trying to line my termination points up. On this particular piece, I think that's going to look better than having offset termination points. You can do either. They just have different looks. So that means that basically I rotate 3 or 4 times forward and then 3 or 4 times back every time I'm rotating. That way my termination point will stay where I put it rather than it kind of slightly drifting. So first I want to gather this one that I just added on there down to being something not horrible. Like right now it's all kinds of just thick in spots and thin in spots and floppy and disky and all sorts of nastiness. So I just got to be patient with it, heat it up, condense it, blow it out, condense it, blow it out, keep doing that and get it to go back to being a reasonable piece of glass. Now the problem here is that the thinnest point right now is right at that crease. And I'm trying to get that to stop being the case because I don't want to blow something that's super thin out to be even thinner because then it has the potential to fold in on me and be awful. So got to be patient with it. So now I've gotten that a little bit more solidified so I can start heating up the other side so that the two can flow into each other and form one consistent piece of glass. I got hit with a lightsaber like right in my rib yesterday. So standing here with a bruised rib is less than ideal. Zach, if you're watching, that was totally your fault. There we go. Now we've almost got it to being back to being one solid cylinder, comfortable shape, and good thickness. This one is going to be the stem of the Sherlock, and then we'll make the can of the Sherlock out of two more. This time I won't be doing a front-facing wigwag, so this stack like this, I just repeat this a second time to make the can of the Sherlock. I keep looking at the clock and I can't decide if I'm going to finish this perfectly on time, early, or like super late. Literally all three of the options are on the table. Hopefully not the super late one because I'm supposed to be making my mom pizza for Mother's Day. So I prefer to not leave her starving. All right, so this is pretty much nice and even. You don't want to rush these steps, especially the steps of evening things out, because that will just make everything hell later on if you don't. And this tube is just not a super big fan of its own existence. So evening it out is even more important. All right, that should be good. So now we're going to heat the whole thing up, add a handle, and pull down our stem. Once again, I want to heat up that spot where I've decided is going to be kind of my termination, where the bottom chamber is going to begin. And then just focusing in spots that are thick to get it down to a nice even stem the whole way down. That's pretty good. Thick spot right here. That's good. All right, so now we're going to push a Maria in right at this joint where the thick meets the thin, which also happens to be where the two wigwags connected. The more even something is, the better your Maria is going to go in too. Now I want to put the mouthpiece. The last one I had a disc mouthpiece. This one I'm doing a standard mouthpiece. So it's going to be heating up a large section and pushing it in, but not to the point where it's a disc. And because it's a wigwag, it's probably not going to do everything nice and smoothly. I'm probably going to blow into it to get it to be a little bit more of a nice sphere shape. Yeah, that's not bad, but you need to blow into it. Just like that. Now we heat that section where the clear meets the color, get it nice and condensed, and straighten it out. Now I want to heat up that bottom section. I'm going to droop it and blow. And all that's going to do is even everything out and kind of bring it down just a little bit. All I'm really trying to do there is even out the glass and modify the shape ever so slightly. So now we'll attach a handle to the bottom. We're going to pull our bend our neck. Looks good. Let that cool. Always going to be some cold nonsense on the back side of your bend. Get rid of that. Tap off your handle. Now we're going to droop this forward. Blow into it. And then pop our hole. All right, so there we have the stem of the Sherlock. That's one way to do it. So now we're going to go ahead and make the can. Beginning process is pretty much identical. So apparently about 2 hours is when I run out of things to say. So all I want to do is even this out. Like I had before. This one is actually a lot more even than the last one I messed with, so that's nice. Pop it open, add the second one. Don't forget to tear off the glass after you pop it open. Line up your termination points. Now we'll mess with this one. And all we're doing is just heating, condensing, the same jazz to gather this all into one smooth cylinder, just like we've done 3 times today. The differences in pipes are very subtle. Like, it feels like 10% of the piece is what makes 90% of the difference as far as how it actually looks. Because at the end of the day, so much of every single piece is exactly the same. It's just a very, very similar process. And then you end up doing a little bit of shaping changes later on in the process. And that's what's actually changing the overall look of the piece. Because you can see you've seen this several times before, of just heating up, getting a section nice and hot, letting it condense, blowing it out, blowing it on the little angle marver to get everything even. Last time, we did that whole thing where we changed the axis after adding that cap piece. We're not going to have to do that this time. I'm just going to let this design sit vertically oriented. And now focus my heat on the first wigwag to allow everything to flow into itself. So now I'm shaping it into its little cone instead of it being just a cylinder. So we got our cylinder. Let it cool for a second, then we'll pop the bowl hole. And I blow really hard when I'm doing the bowl hole on straight on pieces like this because there's a little bit less room to mess with them. So if you blow really hard, it'll pop as soon as possible and should usually leave a reasonably small hole. This one totally didn't, but that's okay. The hole's a little too big. You can just concentrate your heat on there and let glass gather around it, and it'll shrink it down. And that is our bowl. So now we're going to we want our termination points on the sides. So find a spot in the center between the two, whichever looks better. Then we're going to pop our hole. For our attachment to the stem. Like that. Now we'll attach the stem. Want to position it everything so that it's where you want it to be. Take off the bottom handle. Oh, shoot. So it was a little thin at the bottom, so it actually popped a hole. So heat up a large section around that hole. And I just gather it all together. So we'll pull it down. Get a good termination, we'll be all set. So now you can see you close it back up. Now we want to add our bridge. Make sure the bridge is nice and sealed. And then while that's cooling, heat that seam. There we go. So this one, because the front of the can's a little bit less than the stem, this time we're going to be relying a lot more on this back section coming forward to create our nice little swoop on the bottom. Ideally, these will be 50-50 back to front, but it rarely ever goes like that. So we're just kind of doing this over and over. My connection point's a little thin, my little disc there. So I want to make sure I hit that and make sure that blows out as well so I don't have a divot on either side of where the two pieces connect. Getting there. So depending on how things go, this can end up taking a little while or just going together smoothly, perfectly right off the bat. Believe it or not, it usually just takes a long time. But this tubing that I used, because of the difference in density of the colors within the tubing, adds its own little element of not really wanting to do what I want it to do. So you got to overcome that as well. Thing about this particular step is it can sometimes feel like you're making things worse. And it's one of those situations of like it gets worse before it gets better. So you just have to keep at it, and eventually it will work itself to a nice cylinder. But persistence is key. See, now you can see it's almost getting there, even though a second ago it looked ridiculous. So once we get the bottom, there's a little divot on the side I want to get rid of. That's not bad. All right, so now we're going to hit the kind of side here. And I'm just going to puff it out a little bit so that it's a little bit more even with everything else. Take your time doing this. You don't want to over puff. This is also going to change a lot when you do your, well, not a lot, but it's going to change a little bit when you increase the swoop in the hump part there. So we got it on that side. Do it again over here, which needs a lot less, but might as well take the time. Your piece looks good so far. All right, that's pretty good. So now we're just going to heat this. We got to heat this section in the center, top part of the stem, and just heat the hell out of it so gravity takes it down to a nice swoop. And it's starting to droop down. So that went ahead and dropped in nicely. So now we're going to hit that seam section right where the swoop hits like this, hits this, and then lean it forward so that that swoop kind of continues up into the top of the piece. That also has the added benefit of actually guaranteeing that that particular part of your Sherlock where the two discs meet is incredibly like solid. So if this piece drops, I'm not saying it's not going to break. I'm saying it's not going to break right there. Thank you. I'm liking them. It's a good color set. All right, so now we're going to get rid of the bridge. And then we're going to make sure we get rid of those leftover spots from the bridge, pulling off as much of that glass as you can. And then melt in what you can't. Pop the carb. That's good. And we're going to add our grip marks down the side. Remembering to preheat our piece a little bit while we're getting our rod ready. Not only does that make it so it sticks nicely, but it keeps you from getting bubbles trapped. Start with a big one, move size down, follow the swoop of the Sherlock so it draws your eye around the curve. You see like that? Kind of go nicely around the curve of your piece. Melt them in. Make sure those melt in real nice, but you also want to make sure you don't like get it too hot, change the structure of your piece, or have things divot in or any of that nonsense. All right. So that is that Sherlock. So now we're going to take our first project. And you can see came out nice. Go ahead and take it off the tube. Heat around that spot right in front of the disc. I have to make sure this disc is real smooth. You can't have a bubble past your disc. It looks terrible. So first I'll tweeze this away. And then I'm going to pluck out the hole. Then I want to heat up the entire surface of this disc and press against the graphite to get it to flatten. Do that a couple times. Make sure it's nice and flat. And then resize and center the hole. Just like that. Okay, so I'll do my plugs now, and then we'll take the piece off the tube that I just finished because it's in the kiln, and I need to let it heat up, otherwise it might crack, and I don't want that to happen because I like that piece. So for everybody who's watching, thank you. If you stuck with me the whole time, you're a legend. I love you. You're awesome. I appreciate all the support. Make sure if you like the video, you hit that like button, subscribe to my channel. I will be doing streaming 4 to 7 every Friday and Sunday. Friday is going to be art day. Art day. It's going to be the day I just try random crap that I've never done before. And Sunday I'm going to kind of do pipes. So yeah, that's pretty much that. So follow me on Instagram at Vulcan Glass Art, on Facebook at Vulcan Glass Art Studio. And if you want to support the channel further, you can head over to Patreon at Vulcan Glass TV to become one of my patrons. And that will also get me to make you cool stuff on air live. So feel free to check that out. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and take this thing out the kiln, pop it off, and that'll be it for the day. And remember that all of these products that we've done today will have pictures on my my Facebook and Instagram. And then I will also put up a video slideshow well, I mean, it's going to be like a 2-picture thing. I only made 2 things. But I'll put that up on YouTube if you want to check that out tomorrow and get a better look at the stuff that we did. So first I'm going to pull that out, and then I'm just going to pluck out the hole again. Then we're going to heat that up and then shape the hole. And there you have that one. Whew. All right, so that about does it. Thanks everybody so much for joining me. I hope to see you in the next one. You have a good night. And happy Mother's Day.